guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing the chapter 7 from Treasure Trove, that is the Little Match Girl. We've completed almost all of the poems and quite a few of your chapters, and this is another one here. It's by Hans Christian Andersen, and if you pay attention to the names of the poets or authors when you're reading books, right, you will realize Hans Christian Andersen has written way too many stories that are liked by children. Like, he is an OG children's author and he has written this book, and it's quite an interesting book. It's a very nice story. It's a heart touching story. You will get emotional towards the end, and it has quite a bit of symbolism, and the visual imagery is just amazing. Okay, so there's one word you can use in your answers, which is visual imagery. And what do I mean by that? Visual imagery is basically how the poet paints a picture of the surroundings or the situation through his words. So we'll see, and it's the example for visual imagery is in like the very first few lines. Okay, the first line itself is starting with visual imagery. We'll understand that. So let's get started, and definitely check out the other chapters that I have posted on this channel as well. It will help you understand everything very well, and if you go through those ones, right, you will get a good idea of all the keywords and everything that you have to include in your answer to get full marks. Okay, so let's get started. It was bitterly cold, snow was falling, and darkness was gathering, for it was the last evening of the old year. It was New Year's Eve. Okay, so it was bitterly cold, snow was falling, right? And if you imagine these things, bitterly cold meaning it's stinging cold, right? It's so cold that you can feel like pokes in your body. Snow was falling and darkness was gathering. Now, with these words, you have painted a picture of what's going on in the surroundings, right? You can imagine a road where it's so chilly, there's like fog kind of thing. The snow is falling down. It's you can imagine it to be a London street, and it was completely dark. It was evening time. For it was the last evening of the old year, meaning last evening of the old year. Old year is basically a year that has already passed. And what will be the last evening? So year starts on 1st January and ends on 31st December, right? So the last evening is basically referring to 31st December. Let's go ahead. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked bareheaded and barefoot. Right? So it's cold and gloom. What does gloom mean? Gloom means gloomy means sad, right? So the gloom means a sad setting, a grey setting. So here we are being described a young girl. Okay, she is a poor little girl who is bareheaded and barefoot. This shows that she is poor, right? She is said to be poor, but it actually means bichara. Okay, poor here, it means bichara. And also the word poor as in not rich. Okay, and she is bareheaded and barefoot. What does this show? It's a cold evening and she's poor, right? Bareheaded, barefoot, there is such a lack of necessities. It's not even wants, okay? It's needs that are not being fulfilled here. Through the streets. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she had left home. But what good were they? They had been her mother's, so you can imagine how big they were. Now, she had slippers, mind you. She was wearing slippers, but they were of no use. Why? Because they were her mother's slippers. So they're so poor that one pair of slippers is being used by a mother and a daughter, right? You'll actually realize the mothers no more, but it's been passed on from the mother to the daughter. And you can imagine how uncomfortable bigger slippers are, and if you wear them, they are not going to provide you any warmth. In fact, they're so uncomfortable, right? They might hurt your feet and make you feel cold both. Okay, so they're more of a problem than not having slippers. The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. So now you can see actually that how the world is not a very supportive place for poor people. Why? Because if you see someone on the road, you're definitely going to slow down, right? But these two carriages, they drove terribly fast, which means those people are not paying attention to the other person. They were so engrossed in their own life, so into their own things, their own world, that they're not paying attention to what harm they might do to others. One slipper could not be found, and a boy had run off with the others, saying that he would come in handy. It would come in handy as a cradle someday when he had children of his own, right? So now you see here that people are very selfish, right? This boy, who is quite young as of now, right? He is actually going around with a young girl's slipper, a poor girl's slipper, okay? That too for future use, not too for himself currently, but for his children in the future, right? So this is showing, whatever I'm underlining, you guys underline as well. You will be able to use these in your answers and they'll get you some points. Alright. So this shows selfishness. So the girl walked about the streets on her naked feet, which were red and blue with cold, and in her old apron she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. So now this girl's picture, what did we know already? She's a poor little girl, bareheaded and bare feet, right? Now we are being described the girl even more in detail. Her feet were naked, meaning again barefoot, which were red and blue with cold, meaning it's so cold that there are bruises on her legs. Okay, so what does this red and blue signify? Let's write that down. What does red and blue show? It shows bruises. And please do include these highlighted points in your answers, because again they'll fetch you marks. Okay, these are pretty important. In her old apron she carried great many matches. Great many means too many matches. What are matches? Matchsticks. तीली देखी होगी ना अपने घर में. It's like this, alright, and then there's like a head which you light on fire, right? So these are matchsticks. She had a packet of them in her hand as well. Nobody had bought any from her and no one had given her a single penny all day. Meaning there was no sale that day. She is poor. She hasn't sold even a single matchstick. That means she is in a huge trouble, right? She doesn't have any money to have food or, buy something for herself. She crept along, shivering and hungry, the picture of misery, poor little thing. Again, visual imagery. He has painted a picture of this pitiable little girl who is poor, hasn't sold a single thing. She is lacking her own necessities, right? She is hungry and shivering. That means she can't even protect herself from cold. So it's a very pitiable scene here. You are already sympathizing with the girl. The snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck, but she did not think of her appearance now. You see, she's hungry. She doesn't have proper clothing, right? So no matter how pretty she is, she cannot care about these good things about her, because she is lacking something that is way more basic to be alive. You remember there's a very famous dialogue, who cares if you're pretty if you fail your exams, right? And this is actually not as trivial as failing exams. You don't have food. That's a bit more problematic than failing exams, right? Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose on the street. Now it's New Year's Eve, right? It's a very celebrated holiday across London. There are, people take days off, they spend time with their family, they cook delicious food. Everybody sits around the table happily, joking, they're merry, they're playing games, right? But this girl, she cannot do any of that just because she lacks money and she hasn't earned a single penny. For this was the New Year's Eve, and she could not think of anything else, right? Because come on, when you're hungry and you smell food, can you actually function, right? When you're hungry and you're smelling food, you can't really work that well. Why? Because the food is distracting and you're hungry. It's like, you will hear elders say that a hungry mind will never work right. You need to have food before giving your exam. You need to have food before doing something important, or high logical thinking works, right? This girl, she has been hungry for many days. She huddled down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected further out into the street. So imagine this is the side view of a house here. Alright, wait, not very straight. One second. Imagine this is a house here, and there is another building which ends here. So there's like a corner formed between these two buildings. So this building is like this, and there's another building which is like this. Okay, it's a bit projected out. So there's a corner you see over here. So she sits down in this corner and tucked her little legs up under her. She felt colder and colder. So now even though she's in a corner and she's trying to huddle, but she's feeling colder and colder, right? Because, well, again, she's bareheaded and barefoot. She did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches and earned not a single penny. There's another sad thing about this, okay? She did not dare to go home, for she sold no matches and earned not a single penny. Her father would be sure to beat her, showing domestic violence and how this father is exploiting this little child to get money, right? He's making a little girl work to get money, and if she doesn't get money, she's beaten up. That means she doesn't even have a loving family to get back to. And besides, it was so cold at home. Yeah, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them, and the wind whistled through that, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags. So this shows how poor they actually are, right? They can't, they don't even have a proper home. She doesn't have a proper roof above her head. Even a home ceiling, there are cracks and holes in it. And even though they have stuffed them with straw and rags, there is still air, right? Of course, how much can you stop with just straw and rags? Her thin hands were almost numb with cold. If she only dared pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall and warm her fingers. So now her hands and fingers were cold. They were numb, right? You can almost think of them as to be turning blue. So what she thought, she would just light one matchstick and get the heat to warm her fingers. She pulled one out. Scratch. Now what is this? This is the audio or the noise, right? You tell me what it's called when there is voice given to you, okay? This scratch is a figure of speech, right? So you tell me which figure of speech that is. How it spluttered and burnt. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. So she lighted the matchstick and now she's feeling the warmth, right? A warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. But what a strange light! It seemed to the little girl. Okay, now whatever I have underlined here, you underline that in your book too because it's important. Okay, and you might get asked questions on this where you have to write these word by word. Okay, it seemed to the little girl as if she was sitting in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments. Now, this girl's desires are reflected in what she sees. Okay, so there are four visions in all. Okay, so there are four visions and they are all very important. Okay, you need to remember them word by word, and if possible, remember them word by word. If you just remember the gist or some important words, it's great. Okay, so over here it's like the great iron stove is important, polished brass knobs and brass ornaments, this is important. Okay, it's actually basically the whole thing, but in the further visions there is a huge part. All right, so now this girl's wishes are shown in these visions. Okay, her wishes are reflected in these four visions. So in first thing, she wanted to have warmth, which is shown by the star, and she also wanted a good let's say luxurious house, right? Or you can say at least some comforts, which is shown in the brass knobs and brass ornaments. The fire burned so beautifully and gave out such a lovely warmth. Oh, how wonderful that was! The child had already stretched her feet to warm them. When out went the flame, the stove vanished, and there she sat with a burnt match in her hand. So the visions last only as long as that matchstick is still burning, right? So in the flame of the first matchstick, she saw a a stove, a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments, which was one of her wishes. And now the match has gone out. As she was beginning to get comfortable, she's deprived of that happiness. Next, she struck another. It burnt clearly And where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent like gauze. You know what gauze is? Gauze is like this material, okay? So, like, you might have seen these in the clothes that your mom has gotten. So, you might call it astar, but it's not even that dense. It's like just net like this. It's really, really light, and you can see through it really easily. She could see right into the room where a shining white cloth was spread on the table. So now it's like the vision is showing her beyond the wall what's happening. And she could see a shining white cloth which was spread on the table. It shows luxury, right? And how they are rich enough to afford the cloth and the table. It was covered with beautiful china, again showing that they are rich, and in its center stood a roast goose. It's showing the holiday spirit and the people enjoying the good food stuffed with prunes and apples steaming deliciously. Now, again, I've underlined this part. You also underline it and remember as much as you can for word to word, for it is probable that they might ask you this question in the exam. Alright, so it was steaming deliciously, meaning if you pay attention, even the steam of the food, the vapors that come out of the food are really good to smell. You can actually feel more hungry if you smell the food, right? And this girl, she's famished, she's been hungry for days, right? And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down from the dish, waddled across the floor with carving knife and fork in its back, waddled straight up to the poor child. So now this girl is so hungry that she's seeing things. She's imagining the food walk towards her. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick, cold wall. Right? So now the last thing that they could see, right, was just the wall. The match goes out, and this girl can't see anything anymore. So there are two visions till now. One was the iron stove with polished brass knobs and ornaments, and the second one was a table with white shining cloth and a roast goose with uh, prunes and apples, right? Stuffed with prunes and apples. She struck another match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. So now, her third vision is a beautiful Christmas tree, which she would want to celebrate her holiday with, right? It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she'd seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. 1,000 candles lit up on the green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. So now she is said to have seen a rich merchant's house once, okay, and it was like a glass house, so she could see the Christmas tree he had inside, right? But this was much better than that. It was much more beautiful, right? There, and then it had like 1,000 candles which made it really festive, and there are gaily colored balls, meaning colorful balls. If you've seen Christmas trees, you will realize that Christmas trees have decoration of these colorful balls, okay? So gaily colored ball translates to colorful balls. They are like hangings, okay? So if this is a Christmas tree branch, there will be an ornament hanging like this, and there are different colors in here. It's like pink, blue, purple, red, all colors. The little girl reached forward with both hands, then out went the match. Another vision gone, right? The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. One of them fell streaking the sky with light, right? So what's going on now? She sees this vision that this Christmas tree ka एक candle, it goes up into the sky and falls down like a shooting star, right? So streaking the sky with white light, a shooting star is followed by a white path behind it, right? So wherever it has gone through, you see a white light. So that is what they're calling streaking the sky with light. Now someone is dying, said the little girl. For her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but was now dead, had said, whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. Now, there are so many things around shooting stars, right? People wish upon them for something they want. They suppose that, that shooting star will get their wishes to be true. Similarly, this girl's grandmother had told her that whenever you see a shooting star, it means that one person, a soul, has gone towards the heavens, right? One person has died and going to God. Now, this is actually a symbolism of this girl herself. So, basically, when she says soul goes up to God, it refers to the little girl. How? We'll see. Okay. The next vision and everything after that will make it much clearer. Okay. She stuck another match on the wall. Once more there was light and the glow stood her grandmother. Oh, so bright and shining, looking so gentle and kind and loving. So now her last vision includes her grandmother who's looking like really beautiful, really majestic, right? She's looking gentle and kind and loving. Granny, cried the little girl, oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the matches burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the lovely roast goose, and the great glorious Christmas tree. Now, this girl, she's so desperate to go to the one person who loves her because now she's left with just her father, and he would beat her up for not having brought home anything, right? So, she would rather go to her grandmother than go back home. So she's like, please take me with you, and I know you will disappear when this match is burnt out. Like, what will she disappear now? What are the things that resemble her that she's talking about disappearing? So, what are those good things? They are the warm stove. Wait, this is not really bright. One second. The warm stove, the lovely roast goose, and the great glorious Christmas tree. Remember these words and you'll be able to score some marks because there is a great chance that you can use one of these keywords in an answer. Okay. Then she quickly stuck all of the rest of the matches she had in her pocket, for she did not want to keep her grandmother. First, she did so want to keep her grandmother with her. Okay, so what she did, my bad, okay, it's did so. What she did is she quickly got out all of the matches and stuck them because she did not want her grandmother to disappear. She wanted the grandmother to stay with her, to love her, or to take her with her, right? So once she adds all the matches to it, what happens? The matches flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than broad daylight, and her old grandmother had never seemed so beautiful or so stately before. Now I have highlighted this text because it's quite important, so just go through it multiple times before your exam, like twice or thrice. Okay? So the matches flare up. Now it's a complete image of what the girl had seen. There is like a very bright light, and it's so bright that it seems brighter than day. Now, is it possible that just lighting quite a few matches will give you this bright light? No, right? It doesn't. So we'll understand what happens next. And her grandmother looked extremely beautiful that day on in that match light. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, oh so high, towards glory and joy. So what this grandmother does, she takes this little girl in her arms and she's flying high up with this girl, and she's going so far away, and they're going towards glory and joy, meaning happiness. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger nor fear, for they were both with God. So, cold, hunger, and fear, these three negatives of their life, are now unknown to them because now they're both with God. And what does with God mean? They have died, right? It shows death. This little girl is now no more. But in the cold dawn, in the corner formed by the two houses, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips, dead, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. So they're now saying it ekdam surely that the girl is dead. The dawn of the new year rose in the huddled figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a packet had been burnt, right? So she's burnt around half a packet just to keep the vision of her grandmother for a longer time. She was evidently trying to warm herself, people said. This line is very important. This shows how careless people are, how selfish they are, and how unaware of others' miseries they are, right? This girl was walking on the streets just last evening trying to feed herself and her father or her family. And these are the very people who did not help her out. These are the very people who could have helped her out, could have prevented her death, but they did not. Buying a few matches would have made her Christmas better too, but they apparently did not do that, right? People said. But no one knew what beautiful visions she had seen and in what a blaze of glory she had entered with her dear old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of a new year. So it's showing a positive that it's good the girl is no more because this world was a sad place for her. Now she's happy with her grandmother and with God, right? This will also show you the cold heartedness of people. You can see the Victorian era cold heartedness because see, the people are really cold hearted here. The boy steals her shoes or slippers. The carriages drive by terribly fast. People do not help a young girl who is shivering and hungry in the cold on a festive day or on a celebration day. And when she's dead, seeing a dead body, they are like, oh, she was just trying to warm herself. They do not see the fact that somewhere or the other, they too are responsible for the death of this little girl, right? So let us go to the four visions again because they are extremely important, like I told you. So we'll write them down. The first vision you have is the great iron stove with polished brass knobs and ornaments. So after this chapter ends, right, you all will have a part of the page which is blank. So in that blank part of the page, write these four visions down. So when you're revising, you don't have to go through the chapter again. You can just go through these points, right? What is the second one? The second one is a table with white cloth, table with white cloth, roast goose, stuffed with prunes and apples, with a carving fork, a carving knife and fork stuck in its back. Alright, next we have a glorious Christmas tree with 1,000 candles and gaily colored balls. And her last vision, the one before her death, is her beautiful, loving, kind. Oh, wait, I wrote king. That is wrong. 1 second, just 1 second. Beautiful, loving, kind grandmother, right? Who looked more stately than she ever had. So these are the four visions. We also discussed how the cold heartedness was shown. Then there is a lot of visual imagery wherein he paints a picture of the cold evening with the snow falling, the darkness gathering, right? It was a cold and gloomy day. Then he also shows the poor little girl who was bareheaded and barefoot. She walked with her naked feet, which were red and blue due to cold, right? So all of this is important. Some small details, and if you read the chapter about like 5 times throughout the entire year, you will remember quite a bit of it, right? So with this, we'll end today's video. Don't forget to write down all that I've written. Don't forget to highlight and underline whatever I have done so in the video, and write down in the comments if you have any queries or suggestions, or if you want me to explain some particular chapter. And do check out the other videos on other explanations as well. That's it.